Look, bro, you're not gonna like this video, but honestly, it's the truth. Because video games have caused so much damage to so many people, especially young men, and it's even worse if you're Muslim. So if you're anything like me, you probably spent so much of your life, especially your young years, playing video games. Playing video games like Valorant, League of Legends. I don't even know what people play nowadays, but you probably wasted so much of that time. Now, just like every other Muslim teenager, you probably looked up, are video games haram? And obviously, video games are not necessarily haram. There's nothing necessarily haram about them. But there's something important you need to understand, which is that when these sheikhs are talking about video games, they're not talking about modern video games. They're talking about video games at their era. Video games like Super Mario Bros. And, I don't know, Donkey Kong, those very old video games. In fact, you'd have to be very, very lucky to find a video game that doesn't have any music or women. And honestly, just this fact makes 99% of video games haram. And you could say, oh, well, I could just turn off the music. But honestly, this is just a small part of it. There's so much wrong with video games, and I really feel like it's destroying our ummah. Not even just music or women, but a lot of games have straight kufr. Like, how many games you can think of off the top of your head have magic, have sorcery, have raising people from the dead, things like that. And also even, like, have things with other gods. And even these chefs who would agree that video games are allowed and they're permissible would also agree that video games that have kufr in them, magic and stuff like that, are definitely haram. Unfortunately, you'd have to be lucky to find video games that don't have any kufr or any haram things. Now, I know right now I really sound like an uncle or an old guy, but really hear me out, because I used to play a lot of video games, and honestly, it's something that I regret, because I wasted so much of my life, and if I spent that time doing something important and actually spending that ambition in a positive way, I could be 10 times farther than I am now. And this problem with video games having haram elements, that's honestly not even the main problem I see with video games. Even though it's a problem, there's two even bigger problems that I see with video games. Now, the first thing is obviously wasting time, because video games, you probably know this, are one of the biggest time wasters for the young generation. But it even goes deeper than this, and there's things that you probably don't even realize. Because video games don't just waste your time, but they also in a way waste your thought. You and I both know this, at least if you're someone who's played video games, that even if you play a video game for just an hour, you actually don't spend that hour thinking about the video game. You probably think about that game for the next 24 hours for the whole day. Especially if it's like an RPG game, you're going to be thinking about how you could do that quest or grind that boss or whatever else. So this is a thing that most people don't realize, is that even if you spend an hour playing, you're spending the whole day thinking about it, and that's really destroying a lot of other parts of your life. You're not spending your time thinking of things productively. You're not spending your time thinking of your religion or your work or your studies, but instead you're spending that thought power thinking of video games. Now, the effect of that is basically you're going to stop caring about things that actually matter in your life. For example, your religion. I mean, just imagine a student of knowledge who's trying to maybe memorize the Quran, but he plays video games. Instead of thinking about the Quran 24/7 and having that on his mind as his goal and as his ambition, he's going to have the ambition of playing video games and leveling up in that one game he wants to play. Now, all this time spent thinking about that video game instead of doing things important leads to the next problem I want to talk about, which is that video games steal your ambition. The truth is with video games is that they strip away your ambition, because instead of acting like a normal human and having goals in real life, you end up having goals in the video game. If you look at most video games, especially addictive video games, you realize that they stimulate real life. They stimulate self-improvement in real life, but they just make it 10 times easier. And so what that means is the person playing the video game, they're always going to choose leveling up in that video game instead of in real life because it's just easier. But I want you to understand how stupid this is. You could spend an hour leveling up in a video game, leveling up your intelligence stat, or you could spend an hour in real life gaining more intelligence, maybe memorizing the Quran, reading hadith. You know how dumb that is, that you would choose video games over leveling up in real life? And an even stupider example, in my opinion, is people will spend time grinding money in a video game instead of trying to make money in real life. Well, that makes no sense, and even you watching, you probably understand how stupid that is. Now, the interesting thing is, like with social media, even though I think social media is bad, of course, it wastes time, it has a lot of bad effects, it actually doesn't have a similar effect to video games, because video games are unique in that they steal your ambition. If you want to do anything big in this life, for example, become a scholar, then you need a really, really high level of ambition, and video games actually strip that away from you. And that's why you'll never see these really successful people in terms of maybe their religion, people of knowledge. They never play video games. You'll never see a gamer who's also an imam or a sheikh. And the thing is, some people will point to the fact that like Elon Musk and these billionaires, they play video games here and there. But the truth is, on their journey to making that sort of money and making that sort of success, they didn't even touch video games. They didn't even think about it. So you're not Elon Musk. You don't have $1 billion. So you really can't afford to be playing video games and wasting your time and ambition like that. So I know I'm coming off harsh and everything, but honestly, I'm doing this for your sake because video games have destroyed our ummah and especially our young generation, even of non-Muslims. People have no ambition nowadays, and a lot of it is due to video games and, of course, social media and other bad habits like that. And the last thing I want to leave you with is, imagine if the Prophet ﷺ was alive today. What do you think he would say about video games? Do you think he would even play video games? Do you think he would touch video games? Honestly, the answer should be pretty simple, and that's all you need to know about if video games are even good for you or if you should play them at all. May Allah make it easy for us to break our bad habits. Don't forget to stop making dua to Allah, and also check out Clean Islamic Streetwear in the description. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.